Well, good afternoon and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to do some little ideas for you as to how to encourage hedgehogs into your garden. It's very simple and there's a few things you can do if you're just setting out. So here's the first one, a hedgehog crossing. This is a small green structure that we use to reinforce a fence panel, and having cut a hole in it the size that a hedgehog can squeeze through. This is very important because hedgehogs go walking 4 to 5 miles on an average night in search of food and a mate and all kinds of water. So it's really important that you actually facilitate this, because in built up areas they come across fences all the time, which makes it very difficult. This simple structure I purchased for a very small amount of money from a shop called Ethical Superstore. I highly recommend getting this, but have a word with your neighbours first to make sure they're happy. This brings me on to the second little purchase you can make, and that's the hedgehog box. Now if you look at this, I've got several of these in my garden. I'm not going to open it up for you because that would be the worst thing to do, because the hedgehogs could be in there. This is the time of year when they're raising their young and they love to have somewhere very quiet in the corner of the garden where they won't be disturbed. Whatever you do, if you get one of these boxes, don't be tempted to look in it. Wait till April time, maybe even March, when the weather starts to warm up, before they come out of hibernation. Give it a nice clean and put some nice straw in there. Some barley straw is really nice, something soft, or hay, something that's actually going to keep them warm. Put a little bit outside, a little bit inside, and that'll help them because they'll take it in and make a nest. But once they're out of hibernation, whatever you do, leave it undisturbed, because you don't want the mother to abandon the young if they happen to be having them in there. I've got several of these in my garden. Don't put food in there though. You need a separate one for food, because you don't want to encourage any kind of other predators to go in there, because they can smell food and they don't like that. So a nice place like that for sleeping, and something else I'll show you in a minute for food. So the next thing is a nice little collection of logs. I've got a little log pile here, and the reason I've got this is because it is a habitat for all the lovely beetles and insects that hedgehogs like to feast on. It doesn't have to be very large, just a few twigs will do, but just somewhere where they can find their favourite food. So I'll just take you across here and show you the next thing, which is probably the most important. If you only do one thing, this is what I would suggest you do, and that is get yourself some strong, shallow bowls. Now you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go and get these from a garden centre. What I try and do is actually buy the ones that are a little bit damaged. They're only really plant saucers, but they're quite large. They're made of terracotta and they're pretty heavy. And the reason you want them to be heavy is because what happens at night is the hedgehogs will put 2 of their front feet on the rim of the bowl and they'll drink water. So you don't want it to tip up at the other end. So don't buy shallow bowls that are lightweight. You want something sturdy. If you don't want something as large as this, which of course also doubles as a bird bath or a drinking bath for birds, which is very nice for them as well, you can purchase special hedgehog bowls such as the one there. The most important thing at this time of year, because at the moment in Essex it's 27 degrees, is you must keep these bowls clean, because they are a source of mould. They can often get slugs in them, and slugs are not good for hedgehogs if they're infected with lungworm. So the most important thing is to make sure that this is really, really clean. So every night what I do is, I think I can show you over here, I've actually got a brush specially designed for cleaning pots and cleaning plant pots. I just give it a quick clean, pour the excess water away, and then I'll top it up just using an ordinary watering can like this. But I I don't put anything else in that watering can, only water, so I know it's absolutely clean for them. I've got several of these all over the garden, and you'd be surprised about 9-10 o'clock when it's going dark. If you look outside, you'll often see that's the first thing we see in the evening is one of the hedgehogs feeding from the water bowl. The most important thing as well actually is it's lovely for birds. This time of year when birds are really thirsty, it's a lovely place for them to cool off as well. This is very important to put water down. I can't really say this enough, especially in suburban gardens where they're trapped in gardens a lot of the time because fences are all around them, and if you haven't got a hole in your fence, then you know they'll come, perhaps they'll get in squeeze under a gate or something like that, and then they haven't really got anywhere to go, and if they can't drink, especially when they're feeding young, they very quickly dehydrate and they end up in the rescue centres. So lots and lots of water is good for them. Now if you want to feed hedgehogs, it's very simple. They like cat or dog food, but not fish. Meat or cat dog food. They like kitten biscuits, particularly dry kitten biscuits, but you can use wet as well. Just make sure you don't leave it out for days on end. One day is enough, particularly if it's wet food. Now what I get these boxes from the rescue centre. They make them there, and they're very, very lovely because they put them a long way from the boxes where they have, which I've got designed for them to sleep in. And then every evening I'll come in here and I'll put food in there, and then every morning I'll take it out again. So that's very, very important to have food as well. But if you can't do that, then just get the water. Water is a wonderful thing for them. I can highly recommend doing that. So we've covered food, we've covered shelter, we've covered logs, and we've covered water. So what else then? Well, what about making your garden as wildflower friendly as you possibly can? So what I mean by that is don't be tidy, just have a few wild areas for them. You know, everything doesn't have to be neat and cropped. Just be brave. Obviously you don't want it to become an absolute mess, but try and make areas in your garden that are friendly for wildlife. So that's what I do. I mean, I've got things all over the place, but the area in the vicinity of where most of my boxes are is really, really nice in terms of being a little bit overgrown, a little bit wild. You know, we've got the clematis here, for instance, and we've even got some potatoes growing here, and then they've got somewhere to hide because they're quite shy little creatures, and it's amazing how quickly they walk. So if you give them some wild areas, they'll soon be racing around your garden at 100 miles an hour, and it'll be wonderful for them. So that's very important. So the last thing really is to talk about what is dangerous for hedgehogs and what you don't want to do. So the first thing is, if you're going to actually have some wildflower areas in your garden, please make sure that you actually don't get the strimmer out and go, oh, this is looking untidy, I must sort this out, and quickly strim it. Because I know from my conversations with the lady at the hedgehog rescue, they will get into the most incredible situations. They have them under patios. We even rescued one that was born that had her babies in the house because somebody left the patio door open, and the hedgehog climbed in and actually had her babies underneath a piece of carpet in this lady's dining room. They get into refuse sacks that people leave out for the bin men, all kinds of things. You have to be so careful. I've even heard of them falling into holes that builders have left. So whatever you do, make sure that you keep your garden safe for them, and make sure that if you're going to strim an area, just check first and make sure that they're not there, because it's amazing the places they'll go, and you know, they get into compost heaps, and some of them have been rescued just before they were about to end up on the bin cart because they'd climbed into somebody's warm paper sack that they'd left out the night before. I try not to do that here. I try to rush out with the refuse as late as possible before it's collected. I know they encourage you to put it out the night before, but it's not always in the hedgehog's best interest. Make sure if you've got a pond that there's an easy way of a hedgehog getting in and out. Many hedgehogs do drown in ponds, unfortunately. It's a wonderful thing to have a source of water, but they need shallow sides to get in and out. That's very important. And the last thing, of course, and probably the most important, is if you're having a bonfire on bonfire night, please don't actually build it ahead of time, because they will climb underneath the pile, and of course many times they won't survive. So that's my little tips and tricks to get hedgehogs in your garden. We have 4 or 5 a night. It's absolutely wonderful to watch them. They're not actually frightened of light, so if you've got some little string lights, you might find you can actually see them slightly more easily. But I highly recommend them. They are the most wonderful creatures, and they're dying out in this country. We're losing so many every year for all these reasons. So many people are, for convenience, they are digging up their front gardens and laying them to crazy paving and brick driveways, and although these look very smart, unfortunately they're removing their habitat and making them very exposed when they do pass from one garden to another. So and suburbia is traditionally where they do very well if people can just give them that little head start. So whatever you do, try and look after our hedgehogs. If you really love hedgehogs, then and you've got a garden that you think is hedgehog friendly, by all means contact your local rescue centre, because they're always looking for gardens for rehoming the hedgehogs that come into their care, and that's what I do. So I highly recommend that if you can fulfil all the criteria. You may have to have a hedgehog friendly garden check, but if you can do all the things I've suggested, then you're well on your way to creating a wonderful habitat for them. So that's my tips and tricks to get hedgehogs into your garden, and my goodness me, is it a wonderful thing to do.